Welcome back to Rephotography. In addition to sharing what I know about this amazing form of art, rephotography, I also want to share some insight into this amazing area that I live, called Haute-Savoie in the French Alps. And I want to start in Évian, which is known of course the world over for its mineral water. And this is where the mineral water all started, known as the source cachée. So I mentioned in my previous videos I would go through the 14-step process. So that's what I intend to do today, but to go through in detail probably would take me well over an hour. My goal here is to do around about a 15-minute video. So I'll go through them briefly, and then subsequent videos I'm going to go through them in far more detail. Here's the 14 steps that I go through to achieve my images. So let's go through them one by one. Step 1. Choose the location. Maybe your location is fixed. Maybe you just want to do your hometown. I see many rephotographers on Instagram that just focus on one town, and they're very successful doing that. But maybe you go into a region and you want to consider various towns. So what is it you need to think about? Well, maybe you have a particular focus for your images. I see many rephotographers who, for example, are repeating images from the war. So they're looking at locations where there's been battles, where there's been, war scenes. Maybe you're rephotographing steam trains, railways. So obviously you're looking for towns that have or had railway stations. Step 2, you've decided on your location. Now you want to find images. So how do you find the images? The vast majority of the images that I rephotograph are old postcards. Where I find these old photographs, I look online, and there's quite often archives available from those towns that I can gain access to, or I'll contact the town hall. In France, la mairie, or the tourist office, and ask their advice on how I can obtain old postcards or copies of old postcards. Quite often they'll know of individuals who are keen collectors of postcards who may be willing to share some of their images in digital form. Other areas where you could look, for example, Facebook, you could contact members of the town within Facebook and ask them for advice there. There's Reddit, there's Pinterest, there's numerous sites where you could contact individuals. You could look on eBay. There are sites that sell postcards. Look there. You can find hundreds of thousands of postcards there. One of the things that I will touch on, when you found postcards that look to be of interest to you, you need to check the copyright status. This is something I do on each of my images, and I'm not going to go into the copyright laws. They do change from country to country, and I can't say I'm a copyright authority, but it is something you need to bear in mind. Step 3. So you have your postcard. Now you need to try to determine, okay, whereabouts in the town is that? Maybe it's a town you're very familiar with, so you know exactly where to go. But maybe you're visiting a town and it's not so clear where it might be. This is where you need to put your detective cap on and analyze that photograph. Maybe on the postcard, maybe it will give you the street name, in which case you're 3/4 of the way there. You just need to determine where on the street the image was taken. So step 4 is going into Google Street View. So you have an approximate idea where the image was taken. But I can't say the amount of times where I've actually been to the location and all of a sudden found there's an abundance of trees between where the photographer stood and the image that I want to shoot. So that rules that out. Another thing you need to consider where Google Street View is most helpful, is your orientation, your direction. You obviously don't want to be shooting into the sun. So understand your orientation. That's going to help determine at what time of the day you should visit that location to make sure you don't have the sun directly in your field of view. Step 5. Typically where I'm visiting a new town, I'll have multiple locations that I want to shoot. So I create a map that helps me go from image 1 to image 2, etc. Otherwise, you're going left and right. You're not making the best use of your time. So create a map which also takes into account the orientation of the sun, such that you can try to ensure that when you reach the location, again, you're not in a situation where you have the sun directly in your field of view. So you're almost at the point where you can head out to your location. Next step is upload your images onto your tablet. As I mentioned in a previous video, the equipment that really I find essential. A tablet is an essential tool. So upload your images to the tablet, but also sort them such that they coordinate, they align with that map that you've just prepared. So I'll have a folder with image 1, image 2, image 3, etc., just so I know how to proceed. Step 7. So you're now on site. One of the most essential parts to achieving a good result is the alignment between those two images. So when you're on site, you have your tablet with the image that you're looking to rephotograph. And again, this is where the tablet really becomes so vital, so beneficial. So you can zoom in and look, identify that the image, the position. You're looking, for example, adjacent buildings. Where do the roofs intersect? You're looking at the windows and approximately, can you see the full width of the window? Look at the door. You're trying to use all available elements on that original photograph to determine your position. Look at the position on the road, for example. Is he in the middle of the road? Is he on the left side of the road? Typically the road hasn't changed. And again, you're looking for adjacent buildings. The thing that you need to be conscious of, if you're looking, for example, at where the roof intersects an adjacent building, there's a good likelihood the roof may have changed. They may have retiled the roof. Maybe they've even added an extra floor. I do remember getting stuck with one image where I was looking at the roofs to coordinate my position. All of a sudden realized, hey, they've added an extra floor here. So there was no way I could use the roof as an alignment feature. So now you have the approximate position. Let's move on to step 8. And this is where we go to photograph. What I should have said in the previous step is do not look through your camera lens to try to identify your position. This was an error I made at the start, where I tried to use the image through my camera as a way of replicating that old postcard. Do not use your camera. You don't need it at this point. So when we're doing the photography, so because there's been maybe 100 years between the original photograph and the photograph you're about to take, there's a significant difference in the technology. So even if you're in the identical position the photographer of the past was taking his image, the ultimate photograph, the ultimate image that he produced and you produced will be different because of the distortion within the lens, for example. So when you're doing your photography, shoot wider than he actually shot. Shoot wider than the original photograph, because you will be doing some adjustments to compensate for parallax error. Now, I we'll take maybe 7 or 8 images in that approximate location. Each time I'll shift 1 or 2 meters left, right, forward and back, such that when I get home, again, I've got 7 or 8 images that I can compare and choose which image is best aligned with that old postcard. So now we finished our photography. We go home, we upload the images, step 9. And the first thing that I want to do is to select which of the images that I shot best aligns with that old postcard. I'll show in another video how I go through the selection process. But one of the first things that you need to do again is to compensate for that parallax error. In Lightroom, that's a fairly simple process. So you've selected your present image that you think best aligns with that old postcard. Now let's move on to the subsequent post-processing. Step 10. So we're going to post-process both of these images. Let's start with the present image. So I've watched many, and I still watch many YouTube videos from a whole number of photographers. And I have to say, I don't really follow their process because I'm not looking to reproduce or produce a conventional landscape shot. I'm looking to show really the difference between the past and the present. My past image is always in black and white. My present image is always in color. So I want to emphasize the difference between the two. So actually my present image, it may be on the more, let me say, more colorful side compared to a conventional landscape shot. Again, I'm going to go through all the details on how I go through the post-processing in another video. But again, the objective here is to achieve a present image that has a good amount of color to compare with the black and white image. So let's look at the past image, the old postcard. And this is where we may need tools beyond the conventional options within Lightroom. One of the limitations that you may find is just purely the image size. So I'm going to recommend a tool here that I use frequently, and it's a free tool, Upscayl. I'll give the details below here. And this is an excellent tool for increasing the size but also enhancing the quality. It's a tool that I use frequently for my past images. Another option is within Photoshop, and it's in the neural filter section. Again, I'll go through more details in a subsequent video, but again, this will help resolve any damages, or I wouldn't say resolve, but improve the quality of your old postcard. So now we have our 2 images ready to merge. So let's move into step 11, where both of these images are brought into Photoshop and we start to go through the masking process. Now, as I mentioned in an earlier video, there may actually be alternatives to Photoshop that you're using. I've not evaluated all the other tools, but I do find that Photoshop is an excellent tool for what I'm looking to achieve. And it's something where there's constant revisions, which often are helping, again, my end result. So what I'm looking to do in Photoshop is to align those 2 images perfectly one over the other, and then go through the masking process to show sections from the past and sections from the present image that I want to include in my final image. This video isn't intended to go into a deep dive on Photoshop and the approaches. Again, I'll cover some of that briefly, but really you need to have some experience of Photoshop in order to get through this process. Step 12 is where we go through the blending process. And here I'm looking to highlight the elements of both the past and the present which show the difference between the two. So in the old, I want to be looking at the people, I want to be looking at the transport, I want to be looking at the shops and show them in my end result. In the present, I want to bring the color, I want to bring life, energy into the image. And it's this element that I feel almost brings life back into the people. So you've now blended your two images. Important part here, save your work. In fact, I would suggest during the entire process, continue to save your work. You just never know when some disaster may happen, you lose power. So it's something that I continually do through the process, is I'll save my work. Next, step 13, and back to image rights verification, the copyright status. So again, before you share it, just be sure of the situation. It's something I do with each of my images. And lastly, finally, we've got to step 14. Share your work. Share it with Facebook, Instagram. Maybe you have your own website, but also share it with me. I'd love to see the images that you produce. Congratulations, you're now a rephotographer. So if this has been beneficial, please give me a thumbs up. Please follow me. And I'll be joining you in a future video from another town within this glorious region of Haute-Savoie.